Thank you, Riyad. Thank you, Benita. On behalf of the authorities of INCUCAI, Carlos Horatia and Jose Luis Bustos, we would like to thank the organizers for inviting us to participate in such an important workshop. The advantage of being in the last session is that many things have already been said, so I will try to not to repeat them and rather concentrate on how to consolidate the activity of donation and transplantation in a given country, because we take for granted that this is the best strategy to achieve. After what we have heard in the previous sessions, we shall raise two guiding questions. Next. Should there be a national agency handling donation and transplantation? If so, what should be the scope and direct responsibilities of that national agency? We shall begin to answer the second question because it will clarify the response to the first one. When we think of a national government agency, what comes immediately to our minds is the word governance. That is to say, the action, the manner, the system of governing, how we manage to organize, develop, and administrate a certain field. In order to have a good donation and transplantation system, and when we say good, we mean with equitable access for all the population, many factors must be considered. Such a system is per se very complex because it requires different elements that gotta go into action at the same time, and not all of them depend directly on the health sector. We shall try to summarize the tasks that an agency should be responsible for. Next. Firstly, a national donation and transplantation agency should contribute to developing a solid legal framework to regulate this relevant activity. Well, we heard Christopher Van Ach before. He did a thorough description of what the legal framework should contain in the previous session. And it must strictly follow the guiding principles of WHO in the field. But just to mention some of the many regulations that we have to consider, I don't know, for example, develop criteria to authorize centers to perform transplants, oversee the maintenance of the waiting list, develop the process of enabling a report to the agency of illegal activity by a transplant center. Those are just examples. Very important also, advise the government about the importance of developing this activity. For example, by making them see figures, how much it costs to dialyze a patient in comparison with a transplant, let alone the quality of life, as it was mentioned yesterday in this workshop. Next. Secondly, the agency will have to look after the availability of organs and tissues through voluntary, non-remunerated donation, with a focus on donation from deceased individuals. To do so, the promotion of organ donation in the communities is an important strategy. However, more important than that is to organize and consolidate an efficient donation and transplantation services network. Dr. Mirela Busic developed this very well in the previous session. And we wanted to mention this because very often we find the belief that it is a matter of convincing the population that they have to donate, while the whole problem, we believe, is to be able to organize a system that actually responds to the needs of organs. And then, well, in this slide, some of the features that a system should have, but that was already developed yesterday by Dr. Vivek, Dr. Mueller, and also in an excellent way by Dr. Busic some minutes ago. In one word, how to organize the system. In a conversation with Benita, she was telling me that some countries need to adopt, for example, a clear procurement system, while other countries may have already one that is working, for example. Next. Thirdly, the agency should have a solid IT system. It is essential that all the steps in donation and transplantation be registered accurately so that there can be monitoring of the whole process. This gives credibility to the system, as well as it becomes the most important tool against organ trafficking. Well, not only organ trafficking, but as pointed out in the previous session, also against transplant tourism, a serious issue that definitely has to be addressed by governments in regional and multilateral organizations. So it is clear that the agency must oversee the maintenance of registries. Just to mention some of the most important ones, well, organ donors, both living and deceased, waiting lists, recipients of organ transplants. Anyway, it's highly recommendable that the agency be able to collect outcome data, including donor-recipient relationship in the case of living donor, country of residence of donor and recipient, and then disease transmissions from living or deceased donors to recipients. Surveillance, that is another important task of the agency. And then we have also the notify that our Italian colleagues have been carrying out there for a while. Well, I won't say more about this because my colleagues after me, Dr. Ramel and Dr. Hiros, will talk more in depth. Next. I just wanted to mention an interesting experience that we have been developing down here in Latin America. We started the DONASUR in our regional integration process, Mercosur, but it soon spread to 15 countries in the region, including Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, Uruguay, among others. I bring this experience here because it is an international registry that has a very innovative characteristic, and that is traceability. There are focal points in the countries, and they upload only official information, but not only figures. We can then know, for example, that a kidney from donor X went to donor Y, to recipient Y, for example. Of course, it is all codified because of the confidentiality, but the nation that uploaded the data has the information of the identity of the individuals. As you can see, it is an interesting tool that we hope we can develop more in the future. Next. Finally, I also wanted to point out that we have done a fruitful work in the region of the Americas, along with Dr. Mauricio Beltran, consultant at PAHO for blood and transplant, as well as Beatriz, the president of the Ibero-American Network, because she was there when we gave birth to this document. We managed to develop a strategy and plan of action for the Americas that will help us to walk towards the aim of strengthening donation and transplantation in the region by following a highway that lets us use our forces in the right direction, by making profit of the capacities that we already have in the region, thanks to international cooperation. In fact, most of this presentation was inspired not only in the 40 years of history of our national agency, INCUCAI, but also on this document. Yeah. Next, to finish. So once we have summarized what the National Donation and Transplantation Agency should do, we can answer the second question. Is it necessary to have a national agency? Well, the activity is complex and many different requirements must be fulfilled, as we have seen. Having a specialized agency can provide more powerful advocacy within the government in general, as well as within the health sector. This advocacy can result in more resources for the activity, financial and otherwise. However, an agency nested inside the ministry structure is not a condition sine qua non for the development of the donation and transplantation activity. Very often, this activity is managed by an area within the Ministry of Health as part of a department, program, etc., and may suffice in some settings. But as we said before, with more developed and specialized structures, more possibilities exist to create a stronger donation and transplantation system. But of course, that will depend on each case in particular, health systems, political organization, history, etc. Here in Argentina, we have this advantage to have a developed agency with the structure within the health ministry, and that gives us a certain autonomy to be capable to fulfill the above mentioned tasks. So I will stop here. Thank you again, and I remain available for further discussion.